Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Weitz, and welcome to the Functional Medicine Discussion Group. We meet monthly, and we have cutting-edge, new health information to present tonight that you'll be able to utilize in your clinical practice right away. We also have some great programs planned in the coming months. Next month, on July 27th, we have Dr. Mike Carragher and Dr. Jill Stocker on female hormones. On August 24th, we have Dr. Carlos Ulis on men's sexual health. We have Andrea Nakayama on the 3 tiers to epigenetic mastery and the use of the timeline and the matrix from a functional medicine perspective. And that's on September 28th. And then we have Del Bigtree, the producer of Vaxxed, on the dangers of vaccines on October 26th. That should be really exciting. And he's going to play a 20-minute version of the documentary Vaxxed. So these are all very exciting. And there's no fee for all this exciting educational information. Thanks to the speakers and thanks to Metagenics for sponsoring the food and the venue. So let's give Metagenics a hand. Thank you, Metagenics. You're very generous. Please join, if you haven't already, our closed Facebook page, the Functional Medicine Discussion Group of Santa Monica, so we can continue the discussion there. Also, I'm recording the event. I'm going to post it on the Facebook page. Also, please check out my Rational Wellness podcast. A shameless plug for myself. Okay, so our topic for tonight is deuterium and health. What the hell is deuterium, you may be asking? Well, this is really new, cutting-edge information, and this may be the next chapter that is yet to be written in the functional medicine book. Deuterium, as I understand it, is heavy hydrogen. That is a hydrogen molecule with an extra neutron. And higher levels of deuterium are associated with cancer and other chronic diseases. And this is basically taking our functional medicine approach down to the molecular level, but we've got 3 great presenters here to go into all the details for us. So we're so happy that we have Dr. Laszlo Boros, who's currently a professor of pediatrics at a university to be named later, and the co-director of the Stable Isotope Research Lab at the LA Biomedical Research Institute at the Harvard Medical Center, with a primary focus on studying cancer cell metabolism with the use of a specifically designed 13C glucose tracer and mass spectroscopy. Dr. Boros is an internationally proclaimed expert of metabolic water biochemistry, as well as deuterium-mediated kinetic isotopic effects in health and disease. Wow. We also have Dr. Q Collins, and he has a master's in oncotherapeutics and a PhD in clinical immunology. He's the co-founder and principal investigator of Signature Health, the first clinic in the world to use deuterium and tracer technologies to describe and follow the health of patients with metabolic disorders such as cancer, diabetes, and autoimmune disorders. And then we have the lovely Ann Cooper, Dr. Ann Cooper, best known as Jeannie Buss's chiropractor. Just kidding. Besides a doctor of chiropractic, she has a master's in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and she's certified in herbal and functional medicine, among other certifications, and she's the true brains behind Signature Health.
Definitely true. Definitely true.
So we'd like this to be as participatory as possible. Kaylee has a microphone, so we'd like everybody to ask questions. Raise your hand. She's going to come around with the microphone so everybody else will be able to hear your question. So I'm going to start the questions. So the first question for Dr. Boros is, what the hell is deuterium? Why should we care about it?
Yes, so thank you for coming, and I will name the university. I'm a full professor of pediatrics at UCLA, and I have to make a disclaimer right away that none of that we talk here today is the official opinion of my academic institution. I also have contracts with the Food and Drug Administration, and it's the same. And what we talk about, what I say, is the official opinion of necessarily of the FDA. So our current topic is related to deuterium, and I was just going to tell you on the table board what deuterium is, so then we can just go from there.
Right.
So, so if you look at water,
You know what, Doc? Let me see if I can move your mic.
Yeah, the
a
mic
little
is
higher.
not
I
working.
can help. I think that will.
I'll chase him around.
thank you so much.
Is that
So-
better?
Yes,
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
better?
thank you.
So, we're all familiar with the structure of water. That makes up 70-80% of our, or 90% of our body, depending on our age. But actually, water or carbon that binds hydrogen in our system can have either hydrogen or deuterium. Deuterium is actually a twice as heavy hydrogen because it's stable isotope in nature. And the reason for its heavy, for its weight, double weight of hydrogen, is it actually has two particles in the nuclei. The hydrogen only has one neutron and one proton, and there's one electron spinning around it. Deuterium has a proton and a neutron, so it actually makes its weight twice as heavy as hydrogen. So hydrogen, by definition, has one atomic mass unit. We call it Dalton, and deuterium would have two Daltons. So it's actually a twice as heavy pool ball or like a soccer ball. Practically, it's heavy for enzymes, and living creatures don't really deal with deuterium as easily as hydrogen. And hydrogen is very active in our system. Hydrogen provides the synthetic, the reducing equivalent for our biomolecules. Hydrogen is involved in hydrogen bonding in DNA, and hydrogen is involved in energy production, which we call ATP synthesis. It happens through little nanomotors that actually use the hydrogen of water. When they are passing through the mitochondrial membranes, these nanomotors are sitting in the membrane, and the protons or hydrogens can only pass through this little machine that actually spins at very high velocity. It's actually 9,000 rotations per minute, and it's driven by a proton gradient, which is the result of the cytochrome enzymes and digestion. And
What is it that's spinning, Doc?
it's an ATP synthase. It's a nanomotor that produces energy or ATP for our body, and it's called complex 5 also, and it has a spinning nanomotor part, and that's how we produce ATP using the food hydrogen source. But if it's deuterium, then it will break this nanomotor. So the natural hydrogen-deuterium ratio in our system is very critical to understand some very basic fundamental biochemistry that relates to DNA structure, protein structure, and energy production. So the normal range, again, it's very different as far as geographical locations, but the most abundant hydrogen or the most abundant deuterium amount is in the oceanic water outside here, just the coastline, and it's practically 155 ppm, which is 155 parts per million. That means out of a million hydrogen atoms, there is 155 deuterium. It's not a large number, yet if we think about how fast hydrogen passes through the membrane when energy is produced, 9,000 rotations per minute, actually these little proteins per second, they process about 1,500 hydrogens. So even deuterium is not very abundant in nature. They can actually, at this high velocity, they are very sensitive to the deuterium enrichment because deuterium breaks these nanomotors. So practically, we have to control deuterium in our system to produce energy, to actually preserve DNA function and structure, and also proteins function and structure. In biological systems, the normal deuterium level is below 130 ppm. And this is because our biology, our nature, our food source is designed to actually get rid of deuterium from water in nature, and there's a long deuterium fractionation or deuterium discrimination process, and the end step, which is our energy production, by that time there shouldn't be any deuterium that hits these nanomotors. So to get rid of this number of nanomotors, we have a number of biochemical reactions and a number of biochemical systems. And actually this is the clinically relevant range. And obviously, especially in California, now we have data, we are actually pretty loaded with deuterium. So we believe that by breaking the nanomotors in our mitochondria, not being able to produce enough sufficient energy, fatigue, cancer, you name it, chronic diseases set in. And the general population health status, we believe, is very closely related to high deuterium exposures. For various reasons, GMO food, agriculture, irrigation and watering systems, obviously living close to the coastline, global warming, they all deplete or they all actually change this deuterium depletion pattern, and we are actually exposed to more deuterium. But to answer your question, the role of deuterium is in every biomolecule, including water, and by definition, deuterium is the heavy, stable isotope of hydrogen, meaning that it's not going to break up and it's not going to emit any kind of radiation. Tritium, which is the 3-dalton isotope of hydrogen, which you may be familiar with, it's a radiating isotope, so it's not stable. But hydrogen deuterium ratio is very critical, and deuterium is stable, so it's very permanent when we look at certain geographical areas. But we have to control it, and this is what we engaged in. Me as a scientist at UCLA, and also as one of the biochemists who work in these very basic energy producing and biosynthetic reactions. Actually, this is what we study.
So what are some of the factors that we can control that lead to us having higher levels of deuterium?
Anybody?
Go for it, keep going.
Oops, I'm sorry. So deuterium is controlled constantly as we start from photosynthesis to biological substrate oxidation, like how we maintain our energy status and our biosynthetic processes. Photosynthesis, by definition, is breaking water from the ground with the sunlight, with the energy of the sunlight, and the resulting hydrogen and less deuterium, because photosynthesis is already a deuterium discriminating process. This hydrogen will attach to carbon dioxide, and this is how organic materials are synthesized. The plants are eaten by animals, we eat the animals, so we are actually exposed to their deuterium level when we eat and burn their food back into water. Metabolic water is the product of the hydrogen of the food and the oxygen that you breathe in. The reason why we take in oxygen is to produce water. So everything that we ate, the grass-fed beef, the salad, whatever we ate tonight, it will all turn into water in our mitochondria.
Wait a minute, you're saying the reason we breathe in oxygen is to produce water?
That's right. All food that we eat eventually will turn into water, and the carbon source we will actually breathe out in the form of carbon dioxide. And this process takes place in the mitochondria, and this is why the mitochondria has its own water pool. We call it metabolic water or matrix water. And this is the water that is the result of biological oxidation. And one oxygen and 2 hydrogens in our mitochondria will form water again. So photosynthesis breaks water, or biological oxidation will actually restore water, but that water, what we synthesize, is deuterium depleted water.
But what factors, like what things that we can control that lead us to have higher levels of deuterium?
So the things you control, actually the food, different kind of food you eat, right?
Okay.
So eating deuterium, yeah, that's it, that's gonna be it. Deuterium depleted foods, right? So as I said, a green plant. Why are vegetarian diets great? Because vegetarian diets.
So these are the things that are going to decrease
That's going
deuterium
to decrease
levels.
deuterium.
Okay.
That we're going to talk about decrease, and we'll also talk about some body functions and how that works. So deuterium depleted foods, we're talking about eating, again, my expertise in ketogenic diets. The reason ketogenic diets work, ultimately I learned a year and a half ago from this gentleman, is because fat is naturally deuterium depleted. It's naturally deuterium depleted for two reasons. One, because of the carbons and hydrogens that are there and how they're bound together. But second, because if it's a grass-fed animal, right, the fat that you're going to get from that animal is going to be deuterium depleted. So that's why all this discussion we've had for the last 20 years, why organic foods and why grass-fed animals are better, really come down to the deuterium. That's really what it is. And so it's very, very interesting. Now, other things, we know sleep, right? Why is sleep important? Sleep is important because it's during that period of sleep in the REM state is when you get rid of deuterium, okay? Why is breathing, and we talk about all these different breathing techniques, why is it important? Because as Laszlo just said, oxygen comes in, oxygen binds with these hydrogens, preferably with deuterium first to get rid of it, right? It has a higher binding constant and a higher binding dissociation constant. So it binds onto it tighter and binds onto it first and holds onto it tighter to remove the deuterium from your body. Therefore, if you sleep and you breathe better, which you all teach your patients, that actually is depleting deuterium, which will lead to better sleep. And as you see a person that's deuterium level goes down, that person doesn't sleep as long because they don't need that extra REM sleep. So that's the reason you see some people say, oh, I need 8 hours, 10 hours, and other people only need 3 or 4 hours. And we can find out just by looking at their deuterium levels how they're going to sleep, or at least seeing that kind of data.
Now, you have developed some testing methods to determine deuterium levels. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. We're going to show
You can tell them. I'll show.
Yeah, that's really what we started out as diagnostic, because this is very old technology. There's been at least, 3 Nobel Prizes given for this? You know?
Yeah, so deuterium was discovered in 1930, and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was given to Dr. Urey in 1932 for the discovery of deuterium. For the nanomotors, the ATP synthase nanomotors, 2 Nobel Prizes were given for the ATP synthase nanomotor in chemistry, and then 2016 Nobel Prize in chemistry was given for protein engines in cells, meaning that now we are able to look at movements of proteins and we understand their function. They actually perform mechanical work in our body, and these engines are driven by this ATP synthase, ATP after all, yet it originates from this nanomotor that synthesizes ATP. And you may want to ask how much water we synthesize from fat. You'll be surprised, because from 1 pound of fat, after complete oxidation, we actually synthesize.
Guess.
Yes. So from 1 pound of fat, how much water you synthesize?
3
By
pounds.
weight. Huh?
3 pounds.
3 pounds? That would be a little bit too much.
That would be great, but
That would be really great. No, it's actually 1.1 pounds. So one kilogram of fat will give you more than 1 liter of water, meaning that it's really significant. And this is how the camel survives in the desert. This is how all the animals survive without drinking water. Practically, they produce their own water from their own fat. If you look at desert animals, the rattlesnake or the scorpions, they all have fat pads in their backs, and this is how they actually survive. And only 1.5% of mammals actually have to drink water for sustaining their lives, and that's only for the animals that actually live on temperate climates, meaning that they have to produce heat and energy. But actually, we are better off if we produce our own water and we eat a ketogenic low deuterium diet, because that helps our biochemical functions very efficiently.
And so what we've done is we've gone the next step. This, like I said, Nobel Prize has been given for this, but we're the first people to come in and develop assays to measure it clinically. And that's really where our first claim to fame really started. So not only are we able to measure deuterium in your tissue, but also in your biological fluids, and in things like, once you understand the story, to be able to measure it in your DNA, to be able to measure it in your cholesterol, to be able to measure it all the way through, because the appearance of that DNA in within the biological things you see is something you should not see or you should rarely see. So if you see cholesterol with a lot of deuterium in it, that person is not going to make vitamin D. That person cannot make hormones. That person can do a lot of the things. They can't. The sun can't break the cholesterol to drive things down because deuterium stops that from happening. It can't transfer that energy. So you can pick. I know it's one of his favorite topics. We just all day in our life. This is all we do is talk. People will laugh when they come there because, do you guys ever work? No. We educate each other all day about, how does this work? Oh, never thought about that.
Have you got all night?
So that's what we do. So these, and we'll show you some of the assays, and it's been over a 2-year period that we've done this. And remember, these had never existed before. So the first one, we wanted to find out, when we first started, we wanted to see if we could find deuterium in just serum, in blood, in saliva, the things that we, everybody in functional medicine always uses. So we actually did do the same thing, and we developed a saliva, a way to measure in saliva, a way to measure in blood, a way to measure in tears, and anything that's liquid, okay? And that's using this and just urine. It's the same thing that you always did. Your patients don't have to do anything differently. We just measure differently.
Is one method better or more accurate?
So it's the way to look at it is that if we want to look at the tissues, then we use this Breathy method. And this is we just invented this about 6 months ago, right?
About 6 months.
About 6 months. And this is never, and it was actually Laszlo and I got into a discussion one day. We was about to go back to Hungary, and we started talking about, well, what if you could do this? And we started thinking about it, and we came up with this. It's called our Breathy, and it measures the deuterium in your breath. Right? That breath, though, comes from your lungs, and half of the measurement is actually from the tissue of your heart and your lungs. So it's the only thing right now that's non-invasive that can measure deuterium. So we can tell which deuterium levels are in your tissue. And we're seeing that there are different levels of deuterium in young and old. There's different levels of deuterium. In those that are in better shape, those that are metabolically challenged versus those that are not metabolic. We're really getting a lot more data, and what we're really proud of, we haven't been wrong yet. It kind of scares you. We're waiting to fail, but right now, everything's really falling in the line. But this is very simple. All you do is you would breathe into it. And now on top of this, we put a cold metal tube. So you can imagine just like breathing air on a window when it's cold, it catches that condensation, and then we capture the condensation out of this tube, and we measure it on our instruments. And we use, we have a couple instruments we can use. But again, it sounds so simple now, but it was hard getting there. The cholesterol, the same thing. We will have a cholesterol test that we take, regular cholesterol, just like you already know in the blood test, but we go the next step and then fractionate that out to find what the cholesterol level or what the deuterium level is in that cholesterol or in those fractions of lipids. So
I think you're correct. From a cardiology standpoint.
Yep.
So we're not just looking at LDL or particle size, small particle, large one. Now we're actually looking at molecular level, the amount of deuterium in that LDL.
Yeah, because
it's really pathologic.
Yeah, that's really, it's what's so neat about it. After you start to go this, now we're finding, for instance, LDL and HDL. Well, if your cholesterol is high and has deuterium in it, it can't break down, right? So it can't break down, so you keep trying to make cholesterol, and you just keep trying, you keep trying. Well, that keeps taking your cholesterol up. If you still have deuterium in it, and cholesterol is a long turnover product, it's the reason it keeps going up. And then you see those other, if it can't be broken down, it can't be sulfonated. If it can't be sulfonated, it's no longer water soluble, it is fat soluble. So now you're gonna see those fat particles to carry it around in your body. That's why they're there. If you have low deuterium, and those levels are low, then everything's sulfonated and all those other levels are low. So what we say is normal isn't normal. Okay, so we're gonna, as we do this, it's gonna change a lot of our functional medicine indices.
Now, let me pitch in, because cardiology is very important for us, because the right part of the heart pumps blood through the lungs, and that comes from our venous or our tissues. So our breath, as we exhale, will have a deuterium more closely reflecting our metabolic water production. And also the coronary arteries, since oxygen is consumption, is about 10% of oxygen consumption is constantly is coming. Our heart muscle consumes about 10% of oxygen and produces the most metabolic water. So we actually measure metabolic water production in the heart plus in our tissues by looking at breath, exhale breath deuterium content, and it's always lower. And this is data. It's always low as we would expect. And if this is right, yes, indeed, our biological oxidation process always produces deuterium depleted water depending on what we eat. And this is where the food source comes in. If it's grass-fed or grain-fed or GMO or natural biofarms, because simply deuterium content in GMO products is higher simply because actually deuterium makes plants grow, just like they make cancer cells grow. Because they are heavy, they mess up our DNA. Aneuploidy, which is the hallmark of cancer, is actually, it's not oncogenes. Like 20% of people who are diagnosed with cancer have no genetic mutations whatsoever. It's actually deuterium that makes DNA bigger in size in our cells, and that's why they keep dividing. So, and now this is a debate about oncogenomics and actual metabolic profiling. We know now cancer is not a genetic disease. It's a metabolic disease. It's a deuterium-driven disease. And depleting deuterium, we can actually control DNA size in our cells.
Well, my understanding from the little bit I've learned from you guys is that this also corresponds with some of the cutting edge research on ketogenic diet, because the understanding that cancer is related to sugar and glycolysis, and that cancer cells, preferentially use glycolytic pathways for energy. And it also turns out that foods that are higher in refined carbohydrates and sugar actually have higher levels of deuterium. Is that right?
This is correct, yes. Fat is always deuterium depleted compared to carbohydrates. And the reason for that is in plants, sugar is synthesized to make fruit sweet, so animals get addicted to it, so they spread the seeds. Fruits is not food, it's actually functional food, meaning that we should eat it only when it's seasoned, and we shouldn't eat it longer or shouldn't eat it more than we can reach. And simply because fruits is because of the glucose load, is actually not that healthy as people would suspect, simply because of the high glucose and the high deuterium content. So this is why nature takes care of the fruit problem. It's only available during seasons, and it's only available for birds. If they fall from the tree, the bacteria will eat it very quick, meaning that the bacteria can actually select certain substrates out from the food source. Our food industry prepares certain food components for us that is totally out of our biological balance. And so what we actually teach at our clinic, because we are also an educational institute, what we teach at our clinic is that practically you need to stick with your biological instinct, and you need to eat food as your natural habitat would require, meaning that you should eat food from your local geographical area, and you should eat fat, not glucose and carbohydrates. You shouldn't take extra industry-based supplements or food which you don't know where the source is, and you should measure your deuterium level because you should be below 130. And if you're below 130, then you are a much better chance of dealing with certain diseases that are actually related to this deuterium overload, and that includes all population diseases, degenerative diseases, and also biochemical and metabolic problems and cancer. And this is why we believe that just following up on deuterium measurements, depleting deuterium, and changing the lifestyle, learning the art of how to control deuterium, eventually will give us, as physicians, doctors, researchers, scientists, patients, or people with interest, would give us a better chance and a better understanding of really where these deuterium levels should be and what kind of effect we should expect from it.
Other than eating green vegetables and keeping refined carbohydrates out of your diet, what other dietary factors can we employ to lower deuterium levels? Are there specific nutritional supplements that can play a role?
Well, here's the way to look at it. We deplete deuterium to return the power of your body to deplete it on its own, right? That's really what this is about. And we can actually say this, but we deuterium depleted using deuterium depleted water about a month ago, and taking my levels from in the 140s down to in the 130s, below 130. By doing that, and then going off the water, it allowed my body now to start doing what it used to be able to do when I was 20. And that means to be able to deplete deuterium. Deuterium is what makes you old, by the way. That's what ages you. It is your biological clock. Just to let and we can talk about why that works. But what we are seeing is that in my case, for instance, once I was down below that 130 range, my body took over, and we just got a measurement back today, and it's now down to 92. Because now my body says, I've got enough, I can do this, and so it's still now continuing to remove it. That's really what you see. So what does that mean? That means that anything that turns over now is your DNA turnover, over your bacteria turnover, whatever turns over in your body, now the chances are it's no longer gonna have deuterium in it. So the new things that we replace 28 grams of protein, 28 grams a day of who we are, right? So that turning over, again, in I think it's 6 months, you've actually gone through 3 U's, right? And even funner, I think we'll even bring this up. By the way, if you look in the back, we're going to give away several of these. So at the end, we have a bag on the back, put your cards in. We'll give away one of the assays free, and then we're going to give one of the breathies, one of the saliva, and one of the urine assays. And then 2 of our books and 2 copies or 3 copies of our electronic book, Defeating Cancer. And although this is new, we treated over 3,000 patients with cancer over the last 20 years. So we have a lot of data, and over 70 publications.
What kind of protocol do you use for the cancer patients?
Well, we have a whole set of protocols depending on what kind of cancer it is, what stage it is, and even their lifestyle. So, and it's being used this is already being used by several universities. So it's not, again, what we've done is being able to add the part to it that allows you to know exactly what level you are.
From looking at some of the papers I saw, it appears as though you're adding like low deuterium water to their existing cancer protocol. Is that
so? The first place, Gobbler's not here. It's the 4th member of this team. So he did deuterium depleted water. Laszlo joined him. How long ago would you? And the greatest story is, I'll let Laszlo tell it because I have to laugh every time. But you can imagine somebody walking into you at a party and going, "Hey, I got a bottle of water that cures cancer." so that's really the way this started, and him laughing his way out of the bureau. Okay, buddy, yeah, see you later. And now
that's right. To me, it was just as surprising as you might, take this story. And yet, truly, first, I'd like to ask you a question. This is another guessing game, or maybe you know the answer. How much by weight ATP we turn over during the day? The ATP has a molecular weight of 150 Daltons, which is, let's say, the more, 1 mole is about 150 grams. What do you think? How much DNA, how much ATP we turn over in a day with light, let's say, exercise or normal life? Meaning that from ADP we synthesize ATP, we break it down and resynthesize it. This is what we call turnover.
Make some guesses. Come on.
Who would guess?
Come on, Michelle, you did good before.
It's,
I have no idea.
yeah, it's actually 1 ton. It's 1,000 kilograms. In a marathon run, you actually produce 60 kilograms You produce equivalent of your body weight almost just by running for 2 hours in a marathon. You actually produce 60 kilograms of ATP. You turn it over, meaning that you break it down, turn it over. So you can imagine how important deuterium and hydrogen ratio is when you actually count hydrogen so often, because 3 protons or 3 hydrogens are necessary to synthesize 1 ATP molecule. So you can actually triple this weight. So you can imagine how important it is, the hydrogen-deuterium ratio. Now, when Dr. Shomya walked in my office first time in 2004, and before that, actually, one of his colleagues who is actually involved in freight, in shipping goods, he's not a biologist at a party, he told me that he has water that cures cancers. And I told him, listen, buddy, just keep drinking it. That's like huge right there. I didn't take it, seriously. And he told me he would bring some of this water in my lab and we should test it. I said, yeah, sure, bring it in. Tasted good. I mean, it's distilled water. We didn't, take like much of that advice. Yet, a few weeks later, he was asking me what results we got using deuterium-depleted water in cancer cell cultures, because we use glucose, how fast it gets oxidized, we can measure it. And I told him, listen, buddy, first of all, if people want me to study stuff, they pay me first. And this is pretty hefty beer, it's about $20,000. If they have this money, I'm very happy to work with toothpaste, whatever they have, I test it. And they paid that money. And I figured this has to be something really important and very, very critical to them to move forward. And sure enough, we saw biochemical effects. We did not explain those at the time fully. Yet in 2009, I got a phone call from Dr. Marston Linehan, who is the head of the National Cancer Institute's urological oncology program. And he told me that they have a patient, he's in Washington, he's in Bethesda, Maryland. And he told me that they had a patient who died in 6 months of hypernephrosis, which is a clear cell kidney cancer, right? And this patient had a mutation which actually was a mitochondrial enzyme that recycles this deuterium-depleted metaphoric water to fumaric acid. It's called fumarate hydratase. And once they restored the wild-type enzyme of recycling this deuterium-depleted water, there was no cancer phenotype anymore. So they could not use this cell line to induce cancer. And this is when I said, aha, that's how it works. So then we went after these deuterium depletion in mitochondria, DNA structure, rate of proliferation, phenotyping, and phenotypes, and so far, everything that we predicted would relate to deuterium levels. This is how it came out as far as data goes. Yes?
So I missed the original lecture that you guys did. So this is fascinating. It's really wonderful stuff. So what do you do for it besides eat well? What do you do? We test. So what do we do once we test? Where does that go? And how do we get results? And what does it cost? And then what can we tell our patients?
Jump to it, Susan. What's the bottom line?
Bottom line. How do we help people?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'll go with it. So we feel everybody is going to want to know their deuterium levels. So we really want you to know about it, because we want everybody to know and to speak to their patients so that everybody is aware of this.
Jesus, Mike's not working there.
So personally, I don't get up and speak like these guys do, but I talk to all of my patients and all of my friends, and I explain it in a very simple way. Sometimes they understand mitochondria, nobody understands deuterium. As soon as I see the eyes glass over, I speak in very simple terms. It's basically about a car engine and thick oil, and people really get it, and all of my patients want to know what their deuterium levels are. And it's, so once we test them, we have protocols with the ketogenic diet is number one, or we have deuterium depleted water that comes out of Europe. So we are bringing this water in, and the other methods are making sure people are sleeping really well, so our own biology is helping. And we have breathing techniques that we teach our patients. 1 month after the protocols, we retest them. And that chart that is on your paper there is, this is the report that we send out, but the last page of that report is me. And I was really impressed and got all of this when I very first heard about it through Dr. Boros and Dr. Q, and it really made sense to me. But also I was fatigued, and so, okay guys, bring on the water. And in that time period, and even some of my colleagues here, I had called crying, help, I'm so fatigued, what do I do? And I had done a lot of the protocols that we do, went back to my Chinese herbal doctors at the clinic and took numerous amounts of herbs, and I really had very minimal improvement. And I got the water, and I said, am I making this up in my head? I mean, this can't be real. I felt such an immediate improvement very quickly. It's the most efficient thing I've done. But we also did a test, so it wasn't just in my head. We did a basic metabolic rate test while I was doing it. So that's my results that you can see there, which it shows that my basal metabolic rate went up 40% in 7 days. And that's how I felt. So I was already excited, but now I'm really telling everybody, and I want all of you to know about it. We do have lectures at our office for you to learn more. And if any of you really want to be able to learn how to speak to our patients, then I can help you with that also.
And so to answer your question, so again, we have deuterium depleted water. That deuterium depleted water, is, we have what I like to call flavors, but they're different ones that have different amounts of deuterium depletion in them, from 125 parts per million, from 125 parts, I feel like Elvis. Drop the mic. Anyway, 125 parts per million down to 25 parts per million. So depending on who your patients are, we teach you how to diagnose and what to use, and we're always available. And we have rounds once a week. We say this is what they're going to use. In addition, we have ketogenic meals. When I came to it, I came from, again, I'm a cancer immunologist. I developed a lot of ketogenic meals, and probably one of the people, a lot of the things that are out there are my inventions, like, ketogenic breads and all these other kind of things. And I did it from my wife had a cancer, and I had to learn how to do a ketogenic diet. And so it was great because I couldn't cook at all. I was a really taken care of, pampered man, so I couldn't cook, but I was really good at science. And so in a ketogenic diet, when it's therapeutic, is very, very precise and very scientific. It is difficult to do it at home. And so what I did was develop meals that were pre-made that cancer patients could use that were like medical foods. And this gentleman came to one of the conferences that we put on 2 years ago. And he came up to me, and we're having a board meeting, a new, journal. And he came up after me and went, you know what? I know how your ketogenic diet works. And I went, yeah, buddy, life's about the same way. And so we all came down and he explained it. And it's not a joke. I think the next day I went, hey, Laszlo, I've got some money. Let's open a clinic. Let's do it. And we really, myself, Laszlo, Ann, and Gabor, who invented the water, said, the hell with it. We're going to change things, and we'll do it on our nickel. And then UCLA came, we got an IRB, and it's pretty darn cool. We're not the greatest business people, but we're great at science. And we can,
So the tests that you've got, so once you do the tests, do you know the results immediately, or do we need to send them somewhere to have be interpreted?
So here's what happens. We start, that one doesn't work. Yeah, when we start, we start, we do the tests, but we tell the people we need to start deuterium depletion right now because you're going to need it, right? Then it takes about 2 weeks to 3 weeks to get the test back, and then we can set the exact protocol. But you start down, we start about at 125 to 105 parts per million, depending on if it's a diabetic patient, a cancer patient, fatigue, overweight, whatever it is, depression. It's all these things that you guys have already done, but we start there.
Okay, so you've got the breath, you've got the urine, you've got body fluids, you'll have, if you don't already, you'll have blood. Is there a particular type of test that's good for a particular type of series of symptoms?
Well, here's what we start. The most important one we think is the Breathy Test because it measures directly in your tissue. However, we're talking about depletion, right? So really what we're trying to show is that depletion going down. If you look on the paper I have, you'll see a person on 22 days, and you'll see that person going down, down, down in those levels that it's getting below 130. And that's really what we're trying to do. That can be measured using anything, right? Because it's general. However, I love the Breathy Test because I like knowing what's in my tissues. And once we know what's in the tissues, it gives us the next ability to say what it is in our biological components. What is it in our cholesterol now? What is in our DNA?
You have a question? Let her ask a question.
My question is, if you're not sick, would you benefit from this as an athlete, as an optimizing?
Well, let's drop some names like LeBron James. We can talk about some of our clients. So we have several, here's a perfect example, world-class athletes that have won.
I can't mention names, but we do work with athletes. The swimming world competition is coming up in Budapest right now. We work with one of the Olympic medalists, 400 breaststrokes. We do have a good idea of where the deuteriums are. I can't say names or I can't give out data, but in fact, this is one of the major applications that what you mentioned. What you mentioned is one of the major applications because of this ATP synthase nanomotor, and it's so sensitive to these hydrogen deuterium ratios. What we do is, once you start depleting deuterium, you're gonna feel the effect. The first question you're gonna ask me is that, is this normal that I can think clearly, I am more focused, and I'm more able to process certain moods easier. But you don't have to believe us. Actually, there's a paper from Oxford, from the University of Oxford. They measured the deuterium content of drinking water because it changes through geographical regions because of deuterium fractionation. And if you look at bipolar disease, anxiety, and depression, it actually correlates almost 1 with deuterium concentration in drinking water. So in fact, there are very significant papers. We didn't publish those papers. We didn't write those papers. Those are totally independent from our work. Yet there is peer-reviewed data in the literature that you can use for your own information. And for sportsmen, it's not only their physical activity, it's also their mental ability to cope with stress and so on. So as you said, it's very, very effective. And that's one of the major applications.
So how do we get the water?
Help us with the no. We've been fighting with the FDA for some time. Instead, not fighting. So we just had some water come in, and we have another plane full coming in, and then within a month we'll be stocked up until some pharmaceutical company tries to take us out. So let's face it.
Yeah, but again, you may not need water only. You need to make a distinction. I have to, from the biochemistry point of view, I have to clarify. Okay, the water you drink is not the same water that you produce. Okay, so based on your values, saliva, breath, and urine values, you can tell if you need water, or you need food, or what combination of those two.
That's a good point.
So how would you deplete the two most efficient? Some people, and you're right, some people may best benefit from water. Some people may best benefit from food, but most of the time it's the combination of two.
I don't know if this is working.
Yeah, just hold it close enough.
Okay, this is fascinating, and I'm pretty much very familiar with ketogenic diet. I use a lot in patients. I deal with a lot of diabetics, metabolic syndrome, people that are overweight and just metabolically unfit. But, okay, I'm also dealing with the real medical world. So, I mean, 2 weeks ago, you have the Heart Association coming out with saturated fat is horrible for you, coconut oil is dangerous, we should go back to polyunsaturated fats. I mean, this organization's been around since 1926, so we still have a big way to go. So how do we do something that's, I'm totally fascinated about what you're saying, and I believe it, but this is grassroots. How do we, how do we deal with the real medical world?
Well, I mean, we actually, we give a lot of, we're an educational facility first and foremost. So that's one thing we do. A lot of lectures, this guy especially. But secondarily, what is really amazing about what people aren't aren't as afraid of it. It makes me, oh, it's only water. You know, it's only water, it's only water. Because they don't understand the power. We've made things so friggin' complicated that when something sounds simple, people are afraid of it. It's like, oh, you take it down this way. This is the way your it's really empowering because you get to talk about biochemistry and physiology, about the way you really know things work. So I'm very excited that it's going to keep going. And in addition, we've made a decision that we don't say it's a replacement for chemo. It makes it work better. You know, if you decide not to use it, that's your business. But you know, that's the kind of thing that we do. So I do think it's an education, but it is so obvious that we've never had anybody, especially with this guy. I love to see him get into discussions with they hurt my brain sometimes with these people that are equally Nobel laureates. He will win the Nobel Prize. You just got nominated for something, so I don't. But these that start, the people really think you're trying to attack them, and by the time that we talk them through it, they go, "Oh, this supports what I believe," and it really does. We're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to make you understand how it works on a molecular basis. So.
Is there enough data at this point to say to a patient, you have high deuterium levels, you are at increased risk of A, B, or C?
So you can't have, I'll make this statement, you can't have below 130, well, we're talking about cancer, but below 130 and have cancer. It doesn't happen. You've got to have high deuterium levels, at least what we see. There may be somebody that comes through, but the answer is we're getting closer and getting more data. But it is, and also let me also make sure you understand that the deuterium levels change depending on how old you are, if you're going through a growth spurt. A person that's young, that is growing, needs deuterium. That's what allows you to grow. Okay, so we learn these kind of different things. Babies need something. We have just got our first infant, and babies need certain amounts. They need it, and so it's trying to find that level. And what we try to do is get a therapy or protocol that's going to allow that person to be able to naturally do what they're supposed to do when they have that opportunity. So that's really what we do.
Not to hog the stage, but what I'm getting from what I know and what you've said is this is still pretty preliminary in terms of what you can say definitively in terms of
So
Go ahead.
No, so again, there are a lot of people that do this all over the world. I'm very into the cancer field. I know it works for cancer. It is friggin' definitive. I'm sorry. I mean, because the things we combine with the ketogenic diet, with deuterium now, we're talking about thousands and thousands of successful patients and published papers and trials. We're trying to start a clinical trial here now to pick up on that. We know about diabetes. We know about human performance. Of course,
so let's clarify some very basics. Your body produces 130 ppm water. That's not like a dispute. If that's what you eat from natural source, which we measured using GCMS or MRI, we can actually measure the food that we eat. If it's natural source, that's 130 ppm water. Anything above that we think is abnormal. So we have to adjust to that 130 biological threshold. And as far as data goes, there are many case reports. There are actually clinical randomized studies showing that deuterium content in water has an effect on prostate size, PSA levels, disease progression. There are case reports where actually there are total reverse of cancer progression, and there is also these Kaplan curves that we can show much better survival in even very deadly cancers. Those are out in the literature. So we can actually recommend to read these literature, talk to us, and let's talk to your physicians if they need to understand what's the next step. Again, we are an educational facility, and we know these biological thresholds. That's out of doubt practically or dispute what's the normal deuterium level. So there were some other questions you wanted to ask? Go ahead.
I was just thinking sustainability of the water you're bringing over too. If you, I just think in my mind, if somebody says the water cures cancer, or this type of water does, what does that do sustainability and thinking about? Sustainability of getting the water environmentally, sustainability.
It's water.
So it's just what you said you.
So
brought
again,
it.
let me explain to you. Okay, so we actually deuterium deplete the water, right? It's so in water, say it's 155 or 104. We've did a lot of measurements, like most of the spring water and things, tap water and things you drink, are about 147 to 149. I think is what I answered. So in this, what they make deuterium depleted water by fractionation, by using multiple distillations. It's really what it is. And you're taking a fraction down further. So it's sustainability. It's not like...
So the equipment though is somewhere else, or do we have it here?
It's in Budapest.
It's in Budapest, right?
Actually, it's a pharmaceutical grade water. Actually, it's a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
In Europe, in the European Medicines Agency, it has a registration number. It's a medicine. And it's filed as medicine. The only missing thing currently is completed randomized phase 2 and 3 trials, which we are not that eager to finish because obviously we just educate people. That's a pharmaceutical operation. For us, it's the well-being, it's the preventive. We're not changing any treatments. I wouldn't advise a patient or a physician to change any current standard of care. That's not my job. But I can educate them about how deuterium works, what the normal biological thresholds are, and what is the biochemical background of this information, because we can do that. At my academic standing, if I say something with other universities, professors in consensus, which means that we agree, that's a level C evidence. So we do have evidence if we actually discuss this among our faculty, broad enough, deep enough, and with enough details and data. And this is the consensus. So it's not a therapy from our side, but it's actually knowledge, information, and some very critical understanding of how deuterium works and how that can be combined with current treatments, or how it can be used preventively, or how it can be used for certain physical, mental, or exercise things. So this is our expertise.
A quick question. What language can be used when speaking to a patient about this? Can I say this, if your deuterium levels are high, you're at risk of higher risk of cancer? No.
I wouldn't say that.
So we still can't, we have to be very careful. We can point to the research, but we're not going to specifically.
That's probably, that's, you know, I mean, that's,
okay.
I know the chiropractic.
Yeah, we don't say that simply because we do know how cancer epidemics is. It correlates with deuterium in the environment, with industrial foods, GMO foods, and so on. And we know those have higher deuterium concentrations simply because we measure them. So we have data to support certain claims. We would not make those claims simply because those claims are made in a different setting. And we don't say things like you're at risk of this and that, or you are gonna encounter this or that kind of disease based on your deuterium content, but we can educate them what is the kinetic isotope effect, which was hard to spell from my short CV, but actually it has a very robust kinetic isotope effect with many biochemical and biological like backflips or side effects, and they have to keep that in mind.
So I mean, it's almost like, we almost approach it like blood glucose, you know, or, you know, in other words, high blood glucose, you know, bad, you know, and so it's like, this is what your deuterium level should be. This is what a deuterium level is when you're healthy and young. This is what it is when you're old and not healthy. Figure it out, you know, so that's.
One more quick question. What is the general range of pricing for testing and for the water?
So in our testing, it's $99. The testing, it's $99. It's all because we want the information. $99 for the biological fluids, and for our Breathy Test, it's only $206 mailed to you and mailed back. Right? It's very, very affordable. And we really believe that people should know their deuterium levels as much as they know anything, their cholesterol or anything else.
Just like their potassium, their sodium, you need to know. This is an inorganic element in your body. It has a very strict, actually it's the highest of all inorganic elements. What do you think, what is your in millimole per liters? If your potassium, I'm just picking an example, let's say it's 2.5 millimole per liter, what is your deuterium? What do you think? It's actually 11, 12 millimole. It's actually deuterium is the highest inorganic element in your system, besides hydrogen.
In terms of weight?
By weight,
In terms
yes.
of weight.
Yeah. And to go further, the water runs from how much water?
Okay, the water varies from about between $12 and $18 per day for the patient, depending on the ppm. And some people drink a liter, some people drink 1.5 liters a day.
It comes in 1.5 liter bottle. That's what the testing's for. Again, we don't. That's what's so nice. We don't. It's not a shot in the dark. Here's where it is, and then we keep it up until we match what other biological thing we're looking for. If it's a marker you have, we go to that marker is reduced. If it's depression, that depression is gone, and then going a little bit over. But we're able to match your deuterium level with that marker that you, as a clinical provider, decide you is important for your patient.
So how many times do you need to retest?
Yeah.
So that's, and again, this is interesting. I say at least twice. The reason I say that is because it's a before, and then you want to know. I always say you want to do it before, and then when you get to that marker, you want to do it again to see what level you're at.
And then
right?
maybe once a year?
Yeah, once a year. But then we have cancer patients that want to do it more, do it quickly, because it will determine a lot of times what their decision making. I'm going to do it this way. We just had a couple of patients that came in and said, well, let's try this first, and then I'm going to get this done later on. And so that's it's their decision. We educate them.
So you mentioned that in certain times, like times of growth or in babies, the amount of deuterium is higher than is necessary. Do we know the actual biochemical rationale or mechanism by which it's necessary?
Sure. I mean, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so, okay, so we should go back and review some literature, because this has been published in the literature. Deuterium makes cells grow. The way they figured this out is they transfected normal fibroblasts with a ATP-dependent pump that pumps protons, but it retains deuterium, because the deuterium is not a substrate, because it breaks these nanomotors. So fungus has this deuterium-retaining pump, and this is why fungus grows so quick. So if you actually transfect this deuterium-discriminating pump into normal fibroblasts, they become cancers. And that's been published in 1988 in Nature. So these are, and then there was a second paper that followed up with it, and they actually determined that this pump it is not able to process deuteriums because deuterium breaks them. So deuterium accumulation in the cell would actually determine its growth rate. So these are pretty solid equations as far as scientific literature goes. Now for babies, we know because of the rate of proliferation, they require deuterium to maintain DNA size and frequent divisions. So we know that their deuterium concentration is higher than the normal or the grown population. Simply what they retain in their cells is because deuterium regulates this. Some of the growth hormones actually retain deuterium in your cells. So hormonal and metabolic exposure to various agents and entities actually regulate deuterium levels, and this is how you regulate your growth. This is the most fundamental physics, chemistry, and biochemistry based principle of cellular growth. How you apply this to your clinic is what we talk about here, and it's really not like a straightforward inquiry, it's more like an art. You need to know a lot of things and a number or a value that you can correlate with your age, with your growth rate, with your nutrition, with your geographical area where you live, and your local sun exposure, and so on. So it's a number of factors that we have to take in before we formulate any kind of educational, advice for them. Go
Related
ahead.
to that, if you are an athlete who's trying to put on muscle mass, would that also be a consideration?
Yes, because protein supplements are used for building muscle and doing exercise, and that would be, again, a deuterium-related process.
So for an athlete also wants lower deuterium levels or higher deuterium levels. You mentioned growth hormone increases deuterium levels. Athletes
So I
often
can-
try to increase growth hormone levels, or certain kind of
Yeah,
vigorous
they're-
exercise increases growth
Okay,
hormone
that's
levels.
bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, again, we have to make a distinction. If you are performing, meaning that it's not for your look, but it's for your performance, mostly you swim or you do some kind of competitive sports, then you have to regulate your deuterium accordingly. If you want to grow muscles, then deuterium is your best bet. But obviously, it depends on your supplements that you take, the exercise that you do, but those are actually different kind of sports activities.
Yeah, so like bodybuilders, the interesting part about it is the reason they grow so much more mass and size is they do have more mitochondria, more muscles, and they lose the nanomotors frequently, but they actually have more to begin with. And so that's the way but if I'm an athlete like a runner, or LeBron James, or a swimmer, quarterback, and I'm trying for not only size and bulk and speed, but also recovery time, you want those deuterium levels lower.
The deuterium levels in spring water, you said, was between 147 to 149.
Yep.
Is it in distilled water that you could either just get?
Okay, so by definition, if you boil water at 100 Celsius and you boil it into steam and you actually distill it, this will have 4% less deuterium than your water that you started. So you just have to repeat this process enough times. Now, if you do this at low temperature, 50 Celsius, and you actually do it under vacuum, so your water is more like not boiling, practically it's just low temperature and low pressure evaporation and then distillation, then it's 8% less deuterium. So again, it's a physical chemical process, but as you guessed, practically you have to boil the water and you have to distill it. And that's how you deplete.
Coming back to kids for a minute. So I'm curious if you have worked with children, and I'm curious if there are reference ranges that are different for children and what they are.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we work on such a case-by-case basis, and it's everything that goes along with that child, where they live, what they do, how much they exercise, how much sun they're in. So we have to put it all so that we don't have those ranges now, but we know what to do we actually just follow the child. And we believe that we're not afraid to use something like 100. Whatever is natural in the environment, we believe we can take them there, but we don't take them below that range for children. That's where we've been talking about this.
And we actually work with the Mattel Children's Hospital. So when it comes to ketogenic diets, we always work with a clinician, because we don't initiate these treatments unless the pediatrician approves it, and that's why we have to clarify so many things before any kind of treatment can start with kids. With adults, it's a different story, because they are not growth, they are not challenged as far as how fast or what kind of growth they have to document. Yet we do have a baseline, basically what is biologically acceptable, and that's based on data. And this is where we want our patients to consider eventually to be at a lower deuterium level.
So I'm a little disappointed to hear that living at the beach may not be such a good thing.
Say again, at the beach?
That living at the beach might not be such a good thing now.
Well, it is, because again,
don't sell that condo.
Yeah, don't sell the condo. Okay, at the beach, you're exposed to sunlight, so your cholesterol and fatty acid hydrogens resonate better, and they are actually carrying this red light energy to your mitochondria, which actually makes your interfacial water less viscous. So your ATP synthase is always adjusted environmentally to the food source that you eat and where you live. So it depends on your geographical location, but your body is just like a photographer's like photo meter. You know, they usually measure the light before they, like the good photographers, like me. But actually, that's what a good photographer would do: first measure the light or photon pressure or light exposure. And this is what your body is doing through cholesterol and fatty acid hydrogen resonance. What your food is, practically it depends on, again, the photon pressure and how the deuterium is fractionated. So these processes are pretty much linked together. We just had to find these biochemical underlying mechanisms to explain these. And I don't want to bore you with this, but some of these calculations that we have to do, they involve some quantum photon or proton tunneling, some differential equations, but that's the biochemist's work. That's all. That's all what it is.
Well, yeah, that's when we handed a piece of paper.
I'm using the ideal protein ketogenic diet in the office, which is packaged foods. And you mentioned some packaged foods that you were using, so I was curious about that.
Hold it close to your mouth.
Oh, and I think you mentioned some breathing exercises that you have your patients do, so I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Okay.
And then as the chiro, I'm also curious if we have modalities, i.e. laser or low level light therapy or shockwave that you found is,
the
will
lasers.
help the response.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear.
You want to? So, I mean, again, we all do something different in the group, and Laszlo is the chief scientist. He lays out the whole architecture. You know, this is where I really do the therapy type of things, and metabolic therapies, trying to combine them. And our first job is to get the metabolism back to where it's supposed to be. And then once we do that, that's when classical functional medicine comes in, and she takes over and helps the person repair the damage that was caused from having the deuterium levels wrong for so long. And take it on.
Well, I guess we always feel like as functional medicine practitioners, we took pride in finding the root of the problem, which is what we're all aiming to do. But now I really feel like we really go to the root of the problem. So I take this into consideration and really use these methods first. And I do incorporate, the water and the meals. I teach the patient the breathing techniques. We do sleep studies. We want them sleeping really well. I have almost all the patients will do acupuncture. As far as chiropractic, I do a lot of myofascial release and laser therapies. There's a lot of different things out there for mitochondrial function, but as a lab, that's what we intend to do also. We will test, and if you guys want to run any tests, any of your modalities, we'll go to the acupuncture school and we'll get somebody, we'll test them, and that's all they will do. Nothing else will be different. Test them before and test them after. Test, the laser therapies without them doing any other methods. Test them post to see what's really working.
Yeah. Give us some sense of the breathing techniques.
Okay, so we've really realized that carbon dioxide, once thought a waste gas, really helps to dilate the vessels and tells your hemoglobin to release oxygen to your tissues. So I learnt this method quite a while ago in Australia because it's really popular in Australia because they have a really high instance of asthma. It's Dr. Buteyko, you may have heard of him, a Russian doctor, and it's really popular there. And I learned about this and I was teaching asthma patients, but I didn't get the whole picture that it was so good for so many things. It's really good for calming people down and anxiety. But when you use this method, you are increasing your carbon dioxide. So we teach this method, but also we've come about a mask. Dr. Q has adapted this mask that's been around so that if you wear it at nighttime or while you're watching TV.
What's that? No, high altitudes don't work. So no. Again, the high altitude, I know it doesn't increase your CO2. We can talk about that. So what the mask does is very interesting because first of all, when you breathe, remember the deuterium out of your tissue that you're breathing is lower than the deuterium that's in your environment. So we redesigned this mask to where you're rebreathing the deuterium out of your tissues. Therefore, it's depleting, you're helping deplete itself. The other thing it's doing is raising without you working. But the Buteyko method's great, it's freaking hard. It's a lot of work. Without doing, with this mask, it's able to connect, to put that carbon dioxide back into you and raise your oxygen levels up. And all I do is sleep in it, and you don't, the CPAP, all those gone, don't have to do all those things. Turn around sleep apnea in less than a week. And in addition, which is even more amazing, so one of the easiest things you can measure, and the simplest way to do it is how long you can hold your breath. That is a measure of how healthy you are. Because the more oxygen you have inside your body, the healthier it is. So using this mask by itself, and we have a lot of, if you ever read, there's a lot of papers on correlating breath holds with cancer, diabetes, and all these things. With this mask, I've gone from 20 seconds to I'm now 42.
It's the first thing in the morning. They call it the morning control pause. So
and it's just crazy. It's like, well, what did you do? I wore my mask. And I thought about inventing this mask, and I just ran into a guy who had a mask something like it. And it's like we got together and we patented this thing. And it's great, it's cheap. Yes, it's available. That's really what we do. It's really, like I said, you guys should come around. It's like every day, what should we invent today? What can we think of? How can we do this? And it really just depletes deuterium. And it's amazing part about it is that has, Joel's here, that has a lot of association again with sleep apnea and a lot of the things that we've been taught. It's so we don't go for Band-Aid effects. Everything we do is to actually cure it. And so it's a very different approach once you do that. And we're finding that so much of it is, I always laugh, we literally drink the deuterium Kool-Aid because it's like it's like Windex, remember? It seems to do everything, and you get those levels right, and there we go. And then also in the tissue part, to tell about, then it's to try to push it out, right? It's really all those great things.
I really just a couple more questions for them, and I'll leave you guys on. So cognitive decline,
Get
the
the
aging
microphone.
population.
Hang on, Susan.
Thank you.
Sorry. So cognitive decline, the aging population, Alzheimer's, the tangles that are arguably protective for things that are in the body, because that's one. And then the aging population, osteoporosis, osteopenia, starting at when,
I already put that question. I already placed your question.
I forgot about your question the other night.
Okay, so those are two things, and one and two, and then.
Well, it's actually interesting. So with the ketogenic, I came through this again with the ketogenic diet. We know we're treating it using coconut oil and all the other things from 3-4 years ago of using ketogenic diets for cognitive decline. And we just did a big study with University of Pittsburgh Medical Center on using ketogenic diets and cognitive decline. It's very effective. Does it reverse Alzheimer's? It does not. Does it slow it down? Yes. But now we understand really what it is and how this relationship, and this is, Laszlo will love to talk about this, I'm sure, how this relationship between the brain and what's in the brain as far as deuterium goes and how these things work. So the answer is absolute, positively yes, right? It will make you think better, and in 3 days it feels like you're smarter. It's just funny. And we always say it's not that it makes you charge you up, it just makes you feel like you're younger, that you just think faster and you can remember things longer. And we do this, and I've got my mother on it, and everybody, it's like, it's everybody. It's just that simple, And the other thing on osteoporosis, did we get the answer back on the?
Yeah, so again, protein structure, protein loss, or protein degradation, it depends on this ATP synthase process. Molecular crowding depends on this ATP synthase process. So, for example, diabetic, like ketoacidosis, is because of your broken mitochondrial nanomolecules. That's why you cannot spin your TCA cycle, and that's why your glycolysis and ketone bodies and lactate and acetone will actually build up in your system. So we believe that this deuterium hydrogen ratio, as far as regulating the most fundamental biochemical process, and that is energy production in our mitochondria and water production in the mitochondria, these are very critical components that affect osteoporosis, you're right, neurodegenerative diseases, cancer, diabetes, and I could give you almost every disease other than accidents are practically, we believe, have some connection with this biochemical background mechanism.
Would utilizing the water or the breathing techniques, do you believe it would actually increase osteoblastic activity or osteoclastic activity?
Indeed.
Yes.
Anything that is normal and age-related and nutritionally balanced in the sense that you're actually living like a healthy lifestyle, and it's not deuterium overload, and it's not GMO, and it's not industrial like food items or processes, then you have a better chance of living healthy. I can tell this from experience because I did have a twin brother, identical twin, who died of cancer in 2006. And 3 months later, I was diagnosed with esophageal metaplasia the same way. So I didn't talk to an oncologist. I don't talk to them. I just actually started a deuterium breathing protocol, and here I am. And in fact, it's not the genetic makeup. It's actually how you live and what you eat.
So just adding on to that, how do you factor in medication in, just in lowering deuterium levels? And I'm not a nutritionist, I'm a speech pathologist, but I'm just curious as far as how do you factor that in?
So in every case, we tell our patients, or and the docs we work with, we measure the deuterium levels all the time. So how is your medicine affecting the metabolism? If it's a metabolic disease and you're making it worse, think about what you're doing. So that's what we do. We don't, it's all fact-based. And we just try to help guide them and educate them. So, and then allow them to decide which way they want to go.
So you mentioned that you want to be careful with kids just to get them to the 130-ish level and not to take it below because they're growing. And you also mentioned that you retested after doing your protocol and you had dropped further. So do you have a rough range of how many days on water for what level of decrease?
So it's it was in your seat. It's right there.
Maybe I had a lot of room for improvement. So maybe that's why it happened so quickly. I don't know. I mean, I think everybody is going to be individual. Laszlo may be able to answer that.
But you can see in there, it shows you as they're just on water, and most of us are on a good diet too. Actually, I did it, and I ate more carbs in a week than I've eaten in my life for the last 5 years. It was brutal. I lost 60 pounds at one time, and just in case you want to know. So I lost 60 pounds, gonna lose another 40 pounds, but I ate so many carbs. It was crazy just to see the effect it would have with eating a bad diet and drinking the water. And what I say, it makes a bad diet better. And that's what it was able to do. It helped me that way. So that's why I like it too. Even for the laziest person, the most non-compliant patient that you have, they can drink water. So.
Have you had any trouble with pediatrics in lowering their deuterium and then seeing it continue to plummet?
Now, again, we don't have pediatrics cases where we actually adjusted the deuterium level because it's not our job. Actually, they do it at the Materials Hospital. In a few months, I may be able to discuss data in this because we just started reporting data to them. Actually, the UCLA Nursing School, I'm in contact with the dean. They're going to start a nursing program because it's more of integrated medicine. So it's not necessarily the physician, but because it's really non-toxic, it's really non-risky as far as treatment, and we don't change any standard care. We just actually, if the patient or the doctor consider, we just add this to the protocol. And there are some really, from my experience, are two, my block's neighbor had 600 PSA, prostate cancer, metastasis, bone metastasis, they wouldn't even operate. We put him on deuterium depleted water, ketogenic diet. Now his PSA is 32 and he's back to work. There's another relative.
How long did that take?
Huh?
How long did that take?
About 4 months, 4.5 months. I have another patient who actually had PSA of 60, lost about 35 pounds because of prostate cancer. Now his PSA is normal, so it's below 4, and he regained the 25 kilograms plus 5 kilograms, and he's also back to work. He's a handyman. So we recommend this if somebody would actually, and I can recommend this because I was diagnosed with a precancerous condition. My twin brother, why wouldn't I? This is my experience. I can, talk about these. And this is how it works for others. We had other patients who have been going through radiation therapy, and the radiation therapy worked better. We know why. I don't want to go into details. There's a bunch of biochemical information out there just to cover this topic. But as far as children's go, we actually work with the Mattel Children's Hospital because the primary physicians are over there. We only educate them. That's all.
And what you can do when you think about children, just look up everything for the ketogenic treatment of pediatrics. And you can make that say, that's really what's doing. We just have never been able to know that's what it was. So that's a way to follow.
So you have a question? Let her ask a question.
this lady has
This lady, yeah.
I don't know if that complicates.
Yeah,
Talk
just
to them on
push
it.
it all the way up.
If it complicates.
No, push it all the way up.
I don't know if it complicates the question. What about for?
Oh, wow.
What about women who are pregnant, who have diabetes, women who have cancer, but are pregnant, and what about women doing ketogenic diets?
Yeah, so, okay. Cancer, autoimmune diseases usually cease during pregnancy simply because the tumor is taken up by the baby. So we believe that there is a very functional, very important link there. Just simply altering these deuterium ratios by a physiological process like pregnancy, it would actually halt a lot of other a lot of diseases. For example, cancer, autoimmune disease. That's a long observation. Usually, patients don't progress in cancer if they are pregnant. There are other examples that are related to ketoacidosis, molecular crowding. Those are always affected by deuterium one way or another. We can actually improve those conditions with diets, and in ketosis, you are actually way better off as far as protecting your nanomolar, simply because it's low in deuterium, and actually you don't have to go through glycolysis. The ketone bodies are ready to supply the mitochondria with acetyl coenzyme A. So these are we just saw some data from NASA because they are preparing for deep space flights and explorations, and they actually have a glucose level of 2.3 millimolar, which is almost deadly, and a ketone body level of 6.9 millimolar per liter, which is, again, it's almost like unbelievable. It's 20 times the normal lab results and 5 times less of the normal glucose levels, and these are astronauts. So when you ask about these physiological conditions or challenges like pregnancy or astronauts, or that we have a bunch of information and data, which may be a little bit too much for this type of education, but if you're interested, we're very happy to talk to you and give you all those insights that we...
And our meals are going to Mars, by the way. So.
His meals are going to Mars.
So I have kind of a three-part. First is gastrointestinal function. Have you found results of people that have very stubborn gastrointestinal issues? That's one. Number two, any chance pancreatic cancer? You had any cases of that? And number three, I'm just curious of the testing. So if you do want a baseline, and then do you say once somebody starts to feel better, that's at the time where you say, let's now see what your new level is?
I do it 1 month.
So 1 month after they do
The second one is 1 month.
Because we usually can get them down to a certain zone, and that's what we're looking for. And then after again, cancer versus something. We want to get them down into the zone long enough to work on diabetes, fatigue, and those kind of things. And then we allow to see how long the recovery time is and if they can start moving it on their own. So it's different from person to person, but we measure after 1 month almost every time.
After they start a ketogenic diet, they start with water, depending what they need.
Yep.
Then about 1 month, okay.
So about pancreatic cancer, what do you?
We didn't pay her for this either, did we? But what do you think? So inoperable pancreatic cancer patients who are not, the surgeons open them, they said, okay, that's it. We couldn't do much. They live average 3 months after diagnosis. On deuterium depletion protocols, what do you think, according to the Kaplan curve, how long they live? 10 times longer. They live 40 months. And we actually had to stop the trial because we presented it in San Diego at the AACR. And out of the 32 patients who were inoperable pancreatic cancer, 17 of them were still alive. So it's at least 40 months, their average survival. So there are some significant, and you can look at that poster we presented at the AACR. So it's pretty much out there, pieces and bits. If you are interested in any specific type of data, we are very happy to share those with you. We have cards out there, we have plaques, and you can write them.
What about the gastro testing?
Okay, so GI tract is very interesting because Crohn's disease or ulcerative diseases, we believe the problem is that your deuterium discrimination machines, these nanomotors in your epithelial cells, are broken. So your gut starts kind of leaking stuff out that they should pump the other way back to the lumen. They actually let these pass into the bloodstream first locally, and that's where that's how the local inflammation starts, and then they go advance from there. The best efficient treatment that we know of, it's called this ketogenic paleolithic diet, which is a local food and it's ketogenic. So those are actually very effective in these disease conditions, and we are just in the middle of a discussion with a group. We're actually exploring this, but we believe that protecting the nanomotors in our gut is just as important as protecting our nanomotors in our muscles and our liver, because that is a barrier that, everything gets remodeled in our gut. If you eat fat, the lipase will cut off all the free fatty acids, the glycerol, they absorb in the epithelial cells and in the gut, they actually get rearranged. Triglycerides are reassembled, but it's a very different type of fatty acid because they get modified based on the optimal conditions in your body. So it's a very important barrier to keep bad stuff out or composition remodeled practically as part of fatty acids and carbohydrates by the time they get absorbed. If this functions because of lack of protein or proton spinning because of deuterium damage to your gut, if that happens, then you're going to set up your disease conditions as far as autoimmune disease and your potential toxic diseases like Crohn's disease or ulcerative disease.
Well, even like IBS, it's not as serious.
Exactly. It can be very effectively treated with this approach.
Can we, I noticed on your paper here that for anybody who didn't notice, on the first page, all the way on the bottom in very faint gray type is your address, phone number, and email website.
That was brutal.
Thanks.
No, I mean, somebody asked me, how do we get in touch with them? It's
all of our cards are
anything.
in the bag.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can we go to the website or
Yes.
the testing, or do
Yeah.
we call, or how do we?
You can order everything on the website, although we can also, if you want to call, come in and fill it, we can talk to you about how to set it up. We teach you. That's really what we do. But our idea is to teach you as much as we can and help you along the way. That's really what we do. But a lot of stuff's on our website, and we give you some more things, and we can think about what you're saying and give you answers. But everything, like I said, back on the back, there's some brochures, a little bit about the water. Put your business cards in the bag, and we'll draw for And I said, and our book is wonderful too, so I like that.
So the breath test, obviously, the patients can do on their own?
Everything. So
Okay.
everything except the except the blood test. We have to get the blood test and send it.
Can we use West Pacific because they draw for
Well, that's
Genova and
we just have to
Spectracell
contact them, tell them what we need, because what they're going to do is get it, and they're going to send us, send us the whatever they're required to send us.
Okay.
That's not a problem, and then we process it.
And then when the results come back, are they interpreted? Do we call you?
So there's two ways to look at this. This is a pretty straightforward, and you read through it, it explains it, but we'll teach you, and this is where Dr. Cooper comes in, and she goes over with the clinician how to explain it and what to say to your patients and for each and every assay. So.
And then what if we want to order the water? Is that available now?
Yes.
I drank it all. I drank it all.
What we did, we have it set up to
bathed in
where
it.
we have it set up to where you have accounts. We'll have it where we're trying to go with almost a direct type of thing, to where you can give your patients a number, your patients, and then you get a wholesale price. They buy it, you get a check.
But you don't have to carry it.
You don't have to carry anything. That's amazing. Yeah, no. So including the foods, including anything. You don't carry anything, and you're able to. We really want this doctor driven. So it's an idea that you are part of this, talking back and forth to them. Because ultimately we want the data just to see what we are and what's going on. That's really what we're after. But give us a call and we'll go over numbers and those kind of things.
Okay, so I think that's about it. We probably should wrap it up. It's getting late. This was wonderful. Thank you for coming and spending some time with us and giving us some great information. We look forward to getting involved in some of the testing.
And again, we'll send the winner an email of who won what.
You have to be a winner?
Well, you're always a winner, Doc. You know that. Always.